Welcome to Grand Prix Atlanta. This is the feature matches for round 6. And so we have Ray, Sato, and Paul Dean. Ray is on blue-white Godfarer's Gift. Paul Dean on Temur Energy. Very classic matchup in this format.
Yeah, Ray Sato's deck, not many people knew about this deck before last weekend. And Pascal Maynard, making it all the way to the finals of the Pro Tour, kind of brought this deck into the mainstream for everybody. It's a pretty powerful strategy, and it should match up well here against Temur Energy, especially in the first game, unless Paul has changed the contents of his deck.
Yeah. So Ray's playing the same deck as Pascal Maynard played last week, or very close to. He usually the Godfarer's gift decks play more color sometimes. Mm-hmm. Like, what's the advantage of playing blue-white?
I think you get a much more consistent deck. By just playing blue-white, you're not trying to do things like, have a gate go off. You're just, kind of casting spells and coming up the ground until eventually you end up with that gift in the yard that you can return with a refurbish. Or you can make games go long enough that you can just pay 7 mana and put it into play the hard way. The deck seems really strong. It's not trying to do a lot of the cute things that the other versions of the deck have tried to do in the past, and that makes it harder for people to interact effectively with it.
Yeah, so Ray casting Champion of Wits, discarding 2 Angels of Invention. So I take it that's a pretty good discard for Ray. Paul getting to the board with a World of Virtuoso.
World of Virtuoso is going to do a good job of stopping the aggressive cat offensive that Ray was putting together there. But Ray, he's not really trying to be aggressive. Those cats are more to make the game go longer so that he can, end the game by putting 6/6 Flying Vigilance, Lifelink Angels into play with haste.
So what do you think of the key cards Paul could have in his main deck to really affect this game?
So, a Braid is a card we haven't really seen in Temur Energy main decks for quite some time. That could change this week because a Braid matches up so well against both blue-white Godfarer's Gift and the Sultai Energy decks that did so well at the Pro Tour last weekend. If your opponents are playing cards like Winding Instructor, Long Tusk Cub, God's Pharaoh Gift, then a card like a Braid does a lot of work. The thing is that it's been a long time since we've seen Temur Energy play that card in the main, and it's really hard to find room for it in general. So I doubt we're going to be seeing that in the main. We'll probably see it post-board. Magma Spray is a card that, is obviously quite strong against Blue-White God's Pharaoh Gift. The fact that he was able to, get that champion removed from the game so that it doesn't potentially, come back via Eternalize later is pretty important.
So Ray basically attacked with a Sacred Cat, basically right into the maw of the World of Virtuoso, just to trigger really the chart the courses.
Yeah, and for Ray, it's not a big deal because, he's at 24 life. He's really only being pressured in the air by those World of Virtuoso tokens. And now he's got a huge problem on his hands. So Chandra comes down, and with Chandra and the 3 energy and the World of Virtuoso, that Chandra is basically completely protected. And Paul Dean, it seems to me like he has a perfect game plan set up for him to win with a Chandra ultimate 3 turns down the line. I know that's looking pretty far into the future, but the way this one is unfolding right now, it seems like, unless there's like a cast out that Ray has access to in the very near future, that's going to be a big, big problem.
Yeah, it looks like Ray hasn't found a Godfarer's Gift to put in the graveyard yet. I missed the second discard, but I think that actually he didn't, because he attacked with the cat, he didn't have to discard, so he didn't do that. So I don't believe there is one there, because that would probably be the way to really deal with the Chandra, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, he really needs to draw one of 2 cast outs, or find a way to put the God's Pharaoh Gift into his graveyard so that he can reanimate it with Refurbish right now. And that would give him, a large enough, offensive that he could really start pressuring that Planeswalker before it gets out of hand.
Let's say the Chandra actually gets to ultimate. Is there any chance that Ray has a chance of coming back from that?
There is a chance, but I would say it's very, very small.
Okay, so Paul gets to untap with Chandra, always a great feeling.
Yeah, and this turn, Paul has access to 7 mana if he wants it. He could use Chandra to generate some card advantage here if he so desired. He has enough cards in his hand, though, where I imagine he's going to be plussing this for mana on this turn.
Yeah, I think he's got a lot of options because I can see there is a Bristling Hydra the front of his hand. I think he might have some Harness Lightnings as well, which are not that great in this matchup, but probably somewhat useful.
So this is interesting here. With the Whirler Virtuoso not blocked there by Sacred Cat, this is, I think, the first time I've ever seen somebody attack into a Sacred Cat and the Sacred Cat not block in this new standard format. So, interesting thing.
So Paul used the other way of plussing Chandra. He gains 2 red, which allows him to play Bristling Hydra. Why do you think he did that rather than try to do 2 damage?
So he's leaving up 2 mana here, and it's a pretty strong sign that he has a card like Harness Lightning would be the most obvious, but he could also have something like Essence Scatter. And this is going to be the turn where Ray is going to have access to mana to cast a card like Angel of Invention.
Right.
So if he is playing a card like Essence Extraction in his deck or Essence Scatter in his deck, then this would be the perfect turn to leave up that 2 mana.
Ray playing Strategic Planning, a really, really good way of getting either creatures or the Godfarer's Gift into the graveyard. Because it looks like Ray has at least 1 Refurbish. I think he might even have 2. Really, I can't tell what... Well,
Yeah, I think he has 2 copies of Refurbish in his hand there.
right. So he's tapping 3 mana.
And Ray really having some bad luck here with his draws. Going through a huge portion of his deck, not finding a single copy of Cast Out or a single copy of Godfire's Gift. Really the 2 things that are most important to him right now.
Yeah. And it looks like the 2 draws from the Champion of Wits also didn't get either of those cards. So I think, if he's probably got 1 turn to deal with Paul Dean's Chandra before she sets the world aflame.
Yeah, so now he's got to decide how he's going to discard with this. And really just, that last draw step, and he might get to dig a tiny little bit deeper, but... if he's going to activate Azcanta, that's a huge mana investment on the following turn, and he won't be able to play those cards that effectively interact with Chandra.
Yep. So Ray actually last turn, instead of using Azcanta, he used Strategic Planning. And Azcanta would get you 1 deeper. Do you think he was that the right move to cast the Strategic Planning?
I don't know. I think it largely depends on the contents of his hand and the fact that he was perhaps planning on using the Strategic Planning to put a Godsfire Gift in his hand and then still have enough mana to use Refurbish to return Godsfire Gift in the same turn is, it's an opportunity cost. Like, yes, you're less likely to get there, but in the same sense, if you do get there, it's significantly more powerful. You're a turn ahead. So I think there is a lot of value for him to do it the way that he did.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Because he really needs to deal with that Chandra, and he would have had 1 less mana, which means that he wouldn't actually be able to refurbish or play Cast Out. So he plays a Ipnu Rivulet and a Minster of Inquiries. A little late to the party.
Yeah, definitely a kind of card you want to be casting on turn 1. Though, if it's able to find him a Godsfire Gift, it's going to be very welcome. Though now, even if you do return that Angel and have that Hasty Flyer in play, there is going to be a Thopter on the other side of the table to chump block and protect that Chandra. So Ray really, really needs to find a Cast Out here.
Yeah, he could be in big trouble because Paul Dean just drew an Abrade, so probably has an Abrade and the Harness Lightning, so probably can deal with everything except a Cast Out now.
Yeah, so 2 outs in Ray's deck there. He's seen a lot of cards, though. It would not be crazy at all to imagine he's able to find them.
Okay, Chandra getting to the ultimate amount of loyalty, but needs 1 more turn to actually activate that.
Yeah, so making mana there, then floating 1 red, casting Rogue Refiner.
Oh. Okay, we're just using the D12 because that is the customary dice that we use for energy.
Yeah.
When there's like a bunch of D6s on the energy, it's really hard to keep count. I mean, I think most of us can count multiple dice, but it gets a little bit hard to see on coverage. Okay.
You need to count how divisible it is by 3 with this board with Royal Virtuoso and Hydra.
It's true. So, as you say, Ray probably has to get cast out. Otherwise, Chandra ultimates next turn. I mean, do you think there's a case for maybe going up 1 so you keep the Chandra on the other end?
I guess there is a case to be made for it, and some people might want to do that, especially if you don't have much action left in your hand. However, Paul has missed some land drops here, so we know he has a lot of spells in his hand. And if you have a lot of spells in your hand, then a Chandra Ultimate's going to end the game really, really, really fast.
Yeah. So the Chandra Ultimate basically is whenever that player who has that emblem basically casts a spell, it does 5 damage to either a creature or a player. So Ray activating Minister of Inquiries, showing that he's milling over the cast out that he actually needed to draw.
Yeah.
I think Ray knows it's possible that his goose is cooked. Or his life total, maybe.
Yeah, and this is one of the interesting things about a card like Chandra, because, oftentimes it comes down and just acts as a removal spell. But in a matchup like this, removal is pretty weak because the creatures are so, sticky, if you will. So here we go.
So Paul Dean uses the ultimate on Chandra, and now does 5 damage casting Attune with Aether. So that's basically, he's just showing his hand. I've got all these spells that I can cast.
I can cast all these.
I think Ray decides that he cannot survive that. Even if he could, he probably would die another turn. So Paul Dean beating Ray Sato game 1. Do you think that's an expected result, or do you think it should be the other way around?
No, I think that's quite a surprise. I think that Blue-White Godsfire Gift, in game 1 especially, feels like they have a pretty large edge against basically all these energy decks, and that's one of the big selling points for playing the deck. The fact that Paul was able to play a Chandra early enough in the game and just protect it and dodge Cast Out and Godsfire Gift for that many turns, that's pretty lucky of Paul. Although it is worth saying that in a matchup like this, it's really hard to get through just that army of cats on the other side of the table. That's inevitable. So you need to kind of try to go for these weird ways to win. And the fact that Chandra can win a game all by herself is just great. And he was able to, generate extra mana, leave open mana in case things went awry in some way or another, thanks to her additional mana ability. And he was essentially able to just ignore Ray's life total because he knew that if he was able to protect that Chandra and get to 7 loyalty and activate that ultimate ability, then that emblem would be able to deal 20 damage all by itself, and he wouldn't need to bother ticking up Chandra for a measly 2 damage.
Sure. So the Blue-White Godfather's Gift deck doesn't have a good sideboard for energy.
So when we look at this energy matchup, it's interesting because the energy deck's going to be bringing in a lot more removal, essentially, for the Godsfire Gift itself. And creature removal in general gets weaker because they're playing all these eternalized creatures. Now, a lot of players, when they play against these Godfire Gift decks, as a result, they're taking out cards like Harness Lightning a lot of the time because they're saying, oh, well, I don't want to Harness Lightning a champion or a Sacred Cat or something like that. That just seems really bad for me. But then what the Godsfire Gift deck does is they sideboard in a bunch of Fairgrounds Wardens and Angel of Sanctions, and they catch their opponent with no removal spells in their deck, and they're just full of these, Necrotal effects that are removing their opponent's creatures from the game, and they don't have the removal spells necessary to deal with those, and they get a huge advantage in that way. So it's super sideboard dependent, and you can take advantage of people who aren't familiar with the matchup by having them sideboard out removal and bringing in a whole bunch of cards like Fairgrounds Warden and Angel of Sanctions.
So Pascal had this sideboard at the Pro Tour, so it may not be a surprise to Paul Dean, who played at the Pro Tour last week. Do you think that there's a case for not doing the full sideboard because Paul probably knows what the first level of sideboarding is?
See, it's weird because you kind of want to put the onus on them anyway, because if they try too hard to deal with the Angel of Sanctions Fairgrounds Warden part of your deck, then they're leaving themselves open to just getting destroyed by Godsfire Gift itself. So I think the sideboard plan is really strong. and you want to stick with it. I don't think people are playing enough spot removal necessarily in their sideboard to invalidate it. So I think the sideboard plan is most certainly weaker than it was last week at the Pro Tour, but it still seems like the best sideboard plan available to these blue-white Godsfire Gift decks.
Okay.
It's just the jig is up. It's no longer this big surprise, but now people know about it. It's like, well, you know about it. What are you going to do about it?
Paul Dean, quite the standard master, really. He actually had 2 strong finishes last season.
Yeah. And I mean, just he top 8'd a limited GP. I think his first limited GP top 8 just 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago.
Kind of on a tear and going under the radar, at least from a name recognition point of view. Okay. We're going to game 2.
He's had success with Temur Energy before. I mean, previously he got to play with Aetherworks Marvel, which was a pretty nice card to have in that deck.
That seems a lot more powerful energy payoff than Will of Virtuoso.
Yes.
Okay, so Ray, nothing on turns 1 and 2. Paul casting the Longtusk Cub. Ray kind of responding with Champion of Wits, drawing 2 cards.
Yeah, perfect follow-up to that Longtusk Cub. Blocks really effectively here. Can put a card like Godsfire Gift into his graveyard to make cards like Refurbish game-winning.
Right. Let's just say that Paul had 2 energy, like he cast a turn 1. Would it still make sense for him to attack into the Champion? Because obviously the Champion in the graveyard can be brought back later, either with Godfarer's Gift or Eternalize.
I think to some degree you need to pressure your opponent. Like, there are situations where you wouldn't necessarily have to do that. For example, like if you had a hand that had multiple copies of Glorybringer, for example, then you might not need to do that because you can eventually win in the air. But if your plan is just to sit there, then the Godsfire Gift deck has inevitability because of their Godsfire Gift, and you don't want to be really fighting that battle. So here he's going to attack in with that 2 energy.
That's right. He got 2 from the Rogue Refiner, and because he's getting 2 energy, I guess Paul decided he wanted to use the 2 so he can do 3 damage and put Ray on a little bit more of a clock than he was before.
Yeah, and this is what we're talking about in a matchup like this. Like, Paul recognizes that he is the beatdown, and one of the most important parts when you're playing a game of Constructed is recognizing who's the aggressor, and if you are the aggressor, then you want to be applying as much pressure as quickly as possible on your opponent, because in doing so, you're preventing them from getting to the late stages of the game where they would have the advantage.
One of the interesting things is because Ray didn't block, he didn't put the Champion in the graveyard, which really kind of indicated that he didn't have a Refurbish in hand. So Paul can kind of craft his game plan knowing that piece of information.
Absolutely.
Ooh, Vizier of Many Faces. What do you think you target on this board? They're all kind of similar.
Super hand dependent. I think you probably cop Champion, yeah.
Oh, okay. So you got a Champion. Doesn't Eternalize the same way, but it does Embalm. What do you think that indicates? Because he could have had Cub, he could have had Rogue Refiner and drawn a card.
In a lot of ways, I think this play may mean that he had a lot of lands in his hand.
And
the looting ability, and that seems to stand to reason based on the fact that he just discarded 2 lands. But if you have a whole bunch of lands in your hand, then a card that loots you 2 cards becomes really powerful, because it's essentially a draw 2 if those extra lands in your hand are excessive over the total casting cost of any card in your deck.
So bringing in Vizier of Many Faces, presuming he brought it in, he might have had it main deck, but it's interesting to bring it in this matchup specifically, where there's not that many good targets on the other side because they only have 16 creatures and a lot of them are small.
Yeah, I think that Vizier of Many Faces may just be because he's trying to apply as much pressure as possible, and he's just trying to streamline his threats in such a way that his deck is able to finish the game as fast as it possibly can.
So Ray does hard cast a Angel of Invention and choose to use the 2 Fabricates to make 2 servos.
Yeah, Vizier also matches up nicely against both Fairgrounds Warden and Angel of Sanctions in an interesting way.
Right, no, that makes a lot of sense.
So with this Angel on the board, it completely changes the combat math. But Paul, we know, has Confiscation Coup in hand.
Right.
And with Confiscation Coup, he can take that Angel, and it's an anthem for his whole team. That can make a big difference here. And something that's really nice about that, too, is that you're taking the Angel and putting it on your side of the table, so it's less likely that your opponent can use it as a blocker, which he can then return with God's Pharaoh Gift.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense there, too. But he doesn't, if he doesn't have he didn't cast a Confiscation Coup, he's only attacking with Long-Tusk Cub. Do you think that's interesting? Because it seems like it would really, really change the board. It could make him be much more aggressive.
It's interesting. I'm interested to see what his follow-up play here is instead then.
Oh,
ooh, okay.
Nissa, Steward of Elements for 1. Hold on, I'm trying to figure out exactly.
Yeah, so this tells us that
sorry.
he certainly has a spot removal spell in hand, and I think he's recognized a weakness of this blue-white God's Pharaoh gift deck, and that's Planeswalkers. Mm-hmm. The blue-white deck has a lot of trouble pressuring the opponent, and they can't really attack and get loyalty off of these Planeswalkers. They have to use a card like Cast Out to get it off the table. Or, if they're going to pressure it in a real way, they need something like God's Pharaoh Gift, Returning Angel of, Invention.
So, by casting the Nissa into the Angel of Invention, does it mean that Paul has a removal spell? Because
I think almost certainly. Yeah.
So Ray basically trying to figure out what he should be doing. So he actually attacks with everybody into the Nissa, but Paul has an Abrade, and Ray was kind of playing 3-card Monty with his cards, and he knew he had a negate, so he was looking at each one. So now this is like probably going to at least lose 2 loyalty, but they've traded with the Vizier and the Rogue Refiner.
Yeah, so the boards are cleaned up a bit. Paul, probably not thrilled he ran into that negate, but, he's probably much happier to have a card like Abrade negated than to get a card like Confiscation Coup negated.
Yeah.
So,
that makes
wise play
sense
from him.
So he casts a Tune with Aether, getting more energy, so his Long-Tusk Cub can chew on some more. Now, he has 5 mana, so he has kind of 2 plays that I see. If he has the Confiscation Coup in his hand, he could play that. Or he could actually embalm the Vizier of Many Faces. What's kind of the pluses and minuses of doing either?
So by embalming a card like Vizier of Many Faces, then you're leaving with the opponent with the Angel on the board. So if they do have some kind of card to get it off, then you could be in some trouble. But in the same sense, you're also just flooding your board more and making your future removal spells better. Mm-hmm. So that seems like a really tight play for me. The other thing is I think he also has another removal spell in hand. So if he's able to play that other removal spell along with another threat, that might actually be the play, and to leave himself the option of Vizier and Confiscation Coup both in the future.
So Paul used the +2 ability, which allows him to scry 2. Nissa also has another ability of 0, basically flip the top card of the deck, and if it has same or less loyalty than Nissa, it actually goes straight into play. I think it has to be a permanent.
Yeah, so here it looks like he's not going to Vizier or Confiscation Coup on this turn. He's instead going to be playing some sort of threat. That's a great one. And then leaving open his other copy of Abrade.
Yeah, Will of Virtuoso obviously matching up quite well against the 2/1 Angel of Invention.
Yeah, and I mean, he could cash in 9 energy and kill this Angel of Invention if it attacks and still have a Thopter left over without having to invest a card in it at all. And if Ray decides to do something to prevent that from happening, then he could use his Abrade and really gain a huge advantage.
Sure. It looks like Ray's deck isn't kind of doing what it's meant to be doing, as in, casting Godfather's Gift. Do you think that's a risk with this deck, or do you think that its kind of secondary strategy is pretty reasonable still?
I think its secondary strategy is fairly reasonable. I also think the deck is quite consistent. There's a lot of ways to draw cards. There are a lot of ways to fill your graveyard. The card selection when you're playing Charter Course and Strategic Planning and Champion of Wits is really strong. So, even if his deck isn't doing exactly what it wants in the games we're watching, and I think this game it is doing what it wants for the most part, I think that we should not view this as some sort of inconsistent combo strategy. It's very, very consistent. It does what it wants to do in the vast majority of games.
So Ray eternalizes the Champion of Wits. One little cool interaction actually is that the Angel of Invention is giving +1/+1 to the Champion of Wits, so allows Ray to draw 5 cards rather than 4.
Yeah, so he's going to draw 5 and then discard 2, which is obviously absurd.
I do like drawing 5 cards. More than 4, at least.
Yeah.
So it seems that Paul is almost out of resources. He has a reasonable board, but he's got an Abrade and a Confiscation Coup, as well as a Vizier of Many Faces in the graveyard. But Ray's now flooded with cards, so probably has a lot of threats. Who do you think is winning right now?
So right now it's really interesting because right now it looks like if Ray gets to untap, that Ray is going to be solidly in the driver's seat, especially after drawing 5 and then discarding 2. However, what Paul has that could swing things massively just in the following turn is that he can create tons of Thopters on Ray's end step if he wanted to, and then steal the Angel and create a massive pumped army of Thopters. He's not going to do that though. So let's see what his plan is.
Yeah. So I just saw that Paul drew a Glorybringer, which seems like it's excellent in his board.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
You can just exert and kill that Angel without having to use a card. Paul's using Nissa to scry 2 right now.
Although it is very, very dangerous to pass the turn without leaving mana open for that Abrade that Paul has.
You're just worried about the Godfarer's Gift hitting the table and making life bad. That makes sense. Okay, so Paul decides to attack with this 3/3 long cast cub with 10 energy. So it could make it +5/+5 if he wanted to, but he doesn't choose to do it. It's now 12 energy, which also represents 4 Thopters, should Paul choose to use that. Paul still not doing anything. Really, really kind of respecting the return of Godfarer's Gift, either hardcast or refurbished. And speak of the devil, here is a refurbish.
And this is super tight from Paul. Paul had the option of casting a Glorybringer or, casting Confiscation Coup or playing Vizier of Many Faces from his graveyard in the last turn, and instead chose to not cast anything in order to leave open this 2-mana instant that he had.
Definitely rewarded for his patience. And so
beautiful play there from Paul. Great foresight. Of course, when your opponent draws 5 cards and discards 2, you can usually bet on them having the worst possible thing they could have for you.
Okay, so Paul creating a Thopter and essentially chumping the Champion of Wits. Or at least trying to chump. Oh, no, okay, so Ray playing an Ixalan's Binding. Which of his permanents do you think?
I think he is almost certainly taking the Nissa.
Yep, and he does do that. Now, any future Nissas that Paul might draw, not going to be so good, but he probably doesn't have that many.
Yeah, so 3, 5 bodies, steals the Angel. That's 10 damage plus 2 is 12. So he can't kill him this turn by stealing the Angel.
Yeah,
it's close.
It's really funny because you were doing the math in your head, and it was clear that Paul was also doing the math. So it's do I have enough? It's no, not quite. I could almost kind of parallel see you guys doing exactly the same amount of damage. That's same amount of math, I mean.
Yeah, and what's really exciting here for Paul is that he's played this game in such a way that even if Ray is able to,
oh
yeah,
no, it's over. I think Ray
was that enough? That was
either it was enough
7,
or
4 plus 2. Oh, and he had the 1 Thopter, so
yeah. So
I thought it was 14, but
okay. Either way, Ray thought his goose was cooked there,
and it was. No matter what he played on the following turn, he was dead.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. We're going to be headed over.
Yeah.
We're going to be looking in at Corey Baumeister, Standard Master, and Philip Lauren. I'm just getting the life totals set up. Corey playing Temur Energy.
Yeah, we've got a classic mirror match here. Not much difference in the two decks here.
Jake, we actually ran into both Brad and Corey like just outside the venue, and they were like, talking about the version of Temur Energy that they were going to play today. What kind of changes do you think they made?
All right, so I actually played quite a bit this week with Red, and I talked to Brad on Thursday, and we were talking about the deck, and he strongly believes that this version of Temur Energy playing 2 Confiscation Coups and a 3rd on the board is the best iteration for this weekend. Philip Lauren seems to have found the same. I'm not sure if he's friends with Corey or what's going on, but looking at their main decks, their main decks are 1 card different than each other. So,
what's that 1 card?
Corey has a 1 less Glorybringer and 1 more Bristling Hydra, and Philip has 1 less Bristling Hydra and a 4th Glorybringer. So, although it looks like Corey is, lousy with Glorybringers this game.
That's true.
Which isn't a bad place to be.
I mean,
once you're at this stage of the game.
Do you think Corey just couldn't find another normal full art Glorybringer? I don't really like the lack of symmetry on the Corey side here.
I think Corey is less concerned with how his cards look as opposed to what they do.
I don't know. Style points are really important.
Yeah, Corey's been on quite the run as of late. Just a couple months ago, there was a string of North American Standard Grand Prix, which I think was 4 Grand Prix long, where both Corey and Brad were either Corey or Brad were present in the finals of every North American Grand Prix.
It was just an insane run. And, one of the biggest praises actually Brad gave us Corey. Brad thinks that Corey is a better player than him.
Is a better technical player.
Yeah.
I don't know how true that is and how much that's a big brother, loving his little brother. But Corey's really, really good.
It's funny. They've really, Corey's decided to take the game a little bit more seriously this season, and it really just, he just turned it on almost immediately. Got back into the Pro Tour, got to gold. This was a crazy, crazy run for Corey.
And it certainly helps to have a brother who is, one of the best minds in terms of strategy in the game to help guide you through things like deck choice and sideboarding and, the like. And, having Corey as an asset is incredible for Brad also, because, Corey is, such a powerful technical player that he's able to, bring a lot of strategy to the table, once he gets behind the deck and gets into the pilot seat to tell you how you should be playing it in particular matchups.
So with Corey at 15 and Philip at 10, with the Glorybringer, it looks like he's fairly in the driver's seat here. He just played a Rogue Refiner to put himself a little bit further ahead. Oh, and then Bristling Hydra.
And things are looking great for Corey in this spot now.
Yeah, and the matchup is 1-1 now, so this really determines who will actually go to 6-0. A place that Corey is fairly familiar with.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, so Philip drew River's Rebuke.
Ooh, he needs a 6th land in order to cast that River's Rebuke, but that's a pretty powerful spell in a matchup like this.
Right. So he actually has a lot of good cards in his hand. He's got a Chandra. He's got a Vizier of Many Faces. So it looks like he's going to play the Chandra. Now, okay, he's going to kill the Rogue Refiner.
Yeah, and now with a chump block from one of these Thopters to, prevent the Hydra from finishing off Chandra, or I guess Hydra would be going toward his face anyway because his life total is lower than Hydra's potential power. The Chandra will give him enough mana to cast that River's Rebuke on the next turn.
Yeah, so that's really good planning by Philip. You're trying to see a couple turns ahead so you understand, what your plan is.
He's trying to line this up now. The thing is when you cast a card like Reverse Rebuke, you really want to be winning on the board. That's like one of the best ways to be casting a card like that because it seals the deal. Here, the major problem with casting a card like Reverse Rebuke is that Corey can untap and cast a hasty Glorybringer.
Right. Putting Chandra back in danger again.
Yes, exactly.
One of the funny interactions in Philip's hand is that he has a Vizier of Many Faces, which could copy a Glorybringer, but can't kill the Glorybringer because Glorybringer has a clause of non-dragon.
Yeah.
Because it makes sense. If you're a dragon, you should be protected from Dragonfire. I buy that.
I think it's also important for them to put that clause on it just because of how weird it would be playing with the card. If, like, I play my Glorybringer and exert it. Well, I play my Glorybringer and exert it and kill yours. Okay, well, I play mine and kill yours. You know, it would become a bit nonsensical at times.
It's quite funny because I think the person who's going second might be advantaged in that case. Because
yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so he chooses actually, instead of giving the mana, he decides to use the revealing a Sanctum, Botanical Sanctum, but can't cast that, so does 2 damage to Corey. Oh, okay. So Philip basically thought he couldn't really cast.
Oh, he didn't have double blue. He had no energy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that was what happened there. So the reason he plus the Chandra was he needed a way to get more blue mana. Even if there's basically nothing he could have hit on that turn.
Yeah. No,
but yeah, just not enough energy there to find the second blue. Needed to draw a blue source in that turn.
Yeah. So do you think even if he did have a blue source that it would have made a difference?
It certainly would have made it into a game. The problem is Corey would have untapped and cast Glorybringer and Whirler Virtuoso, which would have, and if he had drawn another land, then he could have untapped and cast Bristling Hydra and Glorybringer, although I'm not sure that's necessarily better.
Yeah. Yeah, and he could probably just kill the Chandra if he wanted to. I mean, he could just do damage, just do 4 in the air.
With Philip at 6, also, Corey was about to go up to 18 energy when he replayed the Whirler Virtuoso, so that would have been, 6 flyers in addition to the Glorybringer.
No,
it seems like even if Philip had it, he was gone.
Yeah, so Corey actually moves to 6-0. Really kind of, another day, another standard, path to 9-0 for Corey. Can these brothers be stopped in standard?
I don't really think they can be stopped in standard.
Okay. Thanks very much. I think we're done for these games. We'll be back after these messages.